Over time, the art style of mangaka usually changes as they refine and experiment with how they draw. My go-to examples for artists who have drastically evolved their style include Akira Toriyama, with his art being very different to what it was before, as his characters often used to have very detailed musculature and larger angular proportions, but in his later years he had opted to simplify his art style by drawing more slender, rounded designs. Even Hirohiko Araki did a complete 180 with his art style, initially opting to draw uber masculine but flamboyant characters in the 90s. However, over the last 30 years, his characters have become more slender and more feminine in appearance, as he embraces more of the flamboyance and ditches the muscles. It is evident that Araki was inspired by works like Fist of the North Star, which itself was inspired by the hyper-masculine 80s action movie era, with characters looking like roided up Hollywood movie stars at the time, like Stallone and Arnold. Even Toriyama's art for Dragon Ball in the 90s was inspired by this overly masculine art style, while Toriyama had simplified his art to make things easier for him, as he had transitioned from a full-time mangaka to a concept designer for games like Dragon Quest. Araki, on the other hand, had evolved his art via years of refinement and improvement within the field of manga. The creator of Bleach, Tite Kubo, similarly underwent a drastic evolution with his own art style, which had impacted how he had drawn his manga. Early Bleach featured dense paneling and more blocky, rigid artwork, which later evolved into paneling which helps to guide your eye along the page and get through any given chapter within a shorter amount of time. Kubo's approach towards storytelling is based upon the principle of show don't tell, and his change in artwork complements this. This is exactly why he often uses his expressive art to convey sentences and meaning to us, with character reactions like eye expression taking the place of dialogue. Kubo has little exposition dumps aside from the age-old shonen trope of explaining how your power works to your enemy. Now, in this video, I want to talk about Kubo's artistic inspirations, how his art had evolved from his early serialized work like Zombie Powder until his 15-year run of Bleach from 2001 all the way up until 2016, and how doing weekly manga serialization for that long had influenced and changed its art style for, in my opinion, the better. Before the video begins, only 12% of the people who watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Kubo had submitted his work to Shueisha starting in 1996. His short stories at the time were all rejected. These were the early concepts that had led to the creation of his first serialized work, Zombie Powder. At the age of 18, he released 2 short stories in 1996, the first titled Ultra Unholy Hearted Machine and the second titled Rune Master Urara. Then in 1997, he created the one-shot Bad Shield United, which, if you recall, actually makes a cameo appearance within Bleach as a fictional movie during Chapter 0 Side A The Sand, where Ichigo's friends are talking about going to see a movie which is titled Bad Shield United 2. Now, even here you can see how far Kubo has come with his art by comparing how he had drawn the protagonist of Bad Shield United in the one-shot in comparison to how he draws them in Chapter 0 of Bleach. After 3 rejections, Kubo's confidence was understandably knocked, but he was pushed by the editorial department to continue submitting works until the series Zombie Powder was serialized in 1999. However, it had only ran for 4 volumes until it was cancelled in 2000. A year later, in 2001, Kubo was once again greenlit for serialization with his second work, Bleach, which of course is the series that he is most well known for. Kubo had wanted to become a mangaka from a very early age. He was interested in architectural design, but he had decided to focus on being a manga artist. He has cited several architectural designers as his sources of inspiration for the architecture that features within his work, like Louise Kahn and Oscar Niemeyer. Kubo in particular draws a lot of inspiration from brutalist architecture. Some of the buildings within the Soul Society have been inspired from real-world locations, like the Royal National Theatre in England, the Corbusier's Ronchamp Chapel, and Vienna's Trinity Church. He was inspired to become a mangaka by series like Saint Seiya, citing that the characters were wearing interesting armors with accompanying weapons. Now this of course is the inspiration for the uniform of the Shinigami, along with their individual Zanpakuto, which have unique abilities based upon the individual user. Additionally, Kubo was also inspired by Gigigi no Kitaro, stating that he has always liked the monsters that had featured within that work, which you can see is the inspiration for the hollows that he draws within within Bleach. Kubo's artwork has evolved considerably over the first 5 years of Bleach's serialization. However, his early Bleach art had carried over much of his style from his rejected short stories as well as Zombie Powder. When you read the first 70 chapters of the Bleach manga, which spans the entirety of the Substitute Shinigami arc, you witness a considerable change in Kubo's art style and his approach towards manga paneling. Everything is refined and improved upon, and it demonstrates his commitment to continuously evolve and improve as an artist. There are several excellent visual examples online that showcase how much Kubo's style has evolved from 2001 to 2016, but the most notable changes occur within the first 5 years of serialization. I am assuming that Kubo was determined to not let Bleach meet the same fate as Zombie Powder, which was cancelled after 4 volumes. Now this explains his dedication to improve his art so that it was more engaging and better than before. Now, in an effort to pinpoint where Kubo's art went from being angular to more rounded, I found that there was a major shift in his art from the beginning to the end of the Substitute Shinigami arc. You see it especially with the way that he draws female characters like Orihime and Rukia, who really are the standout examples. The way that they are drawn after this point demonstrates the significant improvement in Kubo's art. Compare how Orihime is drawn from chapter 3, where she has angular facial proportions, then to chapter 44, where we see somewhat of a middle ground with his art style having evolved as we see Orihime's eyes being better proportioned, as well as a change in her facial structure as it's becoming more rounded. In chapter 61, you can truly appreciate the evolution of Kubo's art just by looking at Orihime here. Her face is slender and rounded. The way that he has drawn the shape of her hair has also been improved. Now this isn't because of her having a new hairstyle. It's literally the same hair from chapter 3, but compare the two and you'll be able to appreciate just how far Kubo has come during the first 60 chapters of Bleach. In chapter 72, this panel of Orihime looking up solidifies his change in how he draws women at the very least. Meanwhile, Ichigo retains a similar facial expression and he has a slightly elongated face in later depictions, with more rounding of his face structure too. The biggest change with this character is the way that Kubo draws his hair. In chapter 3, we see that his hair is very fixed in place with long sharp spikes, with his fringe being placed higher on his head, giving him a prominent forehead. In chapter 72, you can see that Kubo had brought his fringe lower, giving him less of a prominent forehead while choosing to elongate his face by giving him a narrower chin. This trend does continue to happen with other characters too, and it's most notable during the first 100 chapters of the manga. Even characters like Byakuya and Renji had similar improvements in how they were drawn. When you compare their appearance from the end of the Substitute Shinigami arc all the way to the Soul Society arc. In chapter 52, Byakuya has a blockier, shorter body shape with more of a angular face. In chapter 116, we see Byakuya again, but his design is totally altered now, having more realistic proportions, longer flowing hair, with an overall slender face, allowing Kubo to add more volume to the top part of his hair. Overall, this is a striking improvement. Then comparing this to chapter 486, where we see a finalized form of Kubo's art style, where he maximizes on all of the areas that he has improved upon from earlier. Comparing the evolution of how Byakuya is drawn from chapter 52, 116, and now here in chapter 486 showcases the overall improvement in Kubo's art style during the 15-year serialization of Bleach. He gradually had started to draw longer faces with more realistic body proportions and facial structures that make every character appear to be very cool and attractive. To summarize, Kubo got a lot better at drawing faces. They became better proportioned, less angular, and more rounded. The girls have larger expressive eyes, while his male characters have thinner, more serious eyes. In general, the series went from being cartoony to having this mature, refined look, with so many areas of his art having improved, including the way that Kubo draws hair. When he now draws hair, it looks fuller and more flowing, rather than before when it was angular and fixed in position, as it had looked really rigid and stiff. I think that the way that Kubo draws hair is one of the biggest changes with his art style. It looks far more expressive and in general better looking. Kubo, in a 2009 Akamaru Jump interview with Masashi Kudo, the Bleach anime character designer, he had cited Masashi Kudo as the reason why he had learnt not to draw hair behind ears. You can see that his attitude and determination to be better was present during the serialization of Bleach, as he wasn't afraid to admit where he can improve upon things, as he had incorporated elements of how Masashi Kudo had drawn his characters into his own manga in order to give us a better product in the end. The story of Bleach had changed into a more darker, mysterious tone, and so did the art style. The characters are drawn with longer, thinner limbs which mimic realistic anatomy, and with clothing and fashion being heavily present within the work. Kubo expresses his unique sense of style via his amazing manga spreads, where he draws his characters in alternate outfits that ooze this sense of cool style, with every fashion choice obviously being catered to the personality of that character. Additionally, Kubo's art is not just limited to characters. Like I'd mentioned earlier, he loves to draw incredible architecture that is inspired by a brutal aesthetic, with some of his backgrounds feeling awe-inspiring thanks to the grandiose structures that he brings to life on the pages of his manga. Kubo is criticized for not drawing backgrounds, but this is by fans who ignore the emphasis that Kubo purposefully decides to give to the expressions of his characters when he whites out the background. This is a technique within drawing manga, as many mangaka choose to get rid of the background to emphasize the characters in any given panel, and Kubo knows how to utilize this technique masterfully. Especially when a new character is first introduced, he has stated that he loves to just fill the panel with only the character without a distracting background, so that the readers can feel the vibe that this character is giving off via the character design and their expression. Additionally, you have the various different well-designed zanpakuto that Kubo effortlessly weaves into the story. He masterfully creates elemental abilities like Hyorin Maru, as well as oversized living beings like Ashisogi Jizo, and even complete changes of appearance like Tensa Zangetsu or Yamamoto's incredible Bankai. You can tell that his love for ghouls and monsters is inspired from Gigigi no Kitaro, and it has helped him to come up with some unique creatures and forms, while his love for Saint Seiya inspired him to give his characters unique, distinctive uniforms that match their personality, like how the Gotei 13 under Yamamoto's control had minimal alterations to personalize their Shihakusho, but the Gotei 13 under Shunsui's control appears to be way more relaxed, and you can see this via the more personalized uniforms that appear during Kubo's latest one-shot chapter, New Breeds from Hell. Kubo is a master at shading and effectively using the black and white coloring to convey atmosphere, emotion, and detail. This too has evolved and improved with time. Like, look at how he uses a sinister dark tone to convey the shift in Unohana's personality when she is appointed to train Kinpachi. We are shockingly introduced to a side of a character that we have never seen before, and this is credited to the highly contrasted blacks that Kubo uses to highlight each crevice of Unohana's face in order to convey this serious alter ego of hers. Similarly, Kubo uses the contrasting black and white to convey spiritual pressure by once again drawing it in this highly contrasted manner, with the blacks muting out the background and allowing us to really feel the suffocation that the characters are enduring because of a powerful character's spiritual pressure. Look at how Kubo draws the spiritual pressure of Kinpachi and Ichigo during their final clash. It is absolutely mind-blowing, and this is contrasted against the start of their encounter when Ichigo first sees Kinpachi, and you can see the dread overcome his face with a crushing black background, making you feel the pressure that is falling down over Ichigo, knowing immediately that Kinpachi is no small fry. Kubo knows how to convey power-ups and transformations in a very unique manner. He draws spiritual pressure like a force weighing down on the characters, like strong spiritual pressure that exerts a greater force of gravity upon those who are weak. He opted not to cover the page with his black, overwhelming cross-hatching during the final Getsuga Tensho, one of Ichigo's strongest forms. Now this design exudes power and style, with the white background and the flowing black energy emanating from him. He didn't draw any more effects to convey Ichigo's power because Aizen was ultimately unable to sense Ichigo's spiritual pressure in this form, because Ichigo had transcended to a new level above Aizen here. The best use of spiritual pressure that I see within the manga was during the fake Karakura-tan arc, when Aizen was toying around with Ichigo's friends, and they feel this black, overwhelming force weighing down on them, almost as if it's about to crush them. Similar to how Nanao had started foaming out of mouth during the Soul Society arc, when Yamamoto had exerted his spiritual pressure during his battle against Shunsui and Ukitake. During the serialization of Bleach, Kubo had inked his art using the traditional G-pen used by all of the great mangaka. However, he is now shifting over to digital art, and he has created some really great pieces of work since his time off from weekly serialization. Kubo was someone who had a lot of potential, which is something that the Jump editorial department had spotted when he was only 18. Despite his lack of faith in his own ability at the start, Kubo would prove himself wrong and become one of the greatest mangaka of our time thanks to his unique art style and method of storytelling that leaves fans rereading his work, piecing together all of the mysteries and foreshadowings that Kubo meticulously has has incorporated into his art. Kubo's storytelling can only work with manga. His unique way to tell a story without words, letting his art speak for itself, is one of the reasons why I love his work. How he focuses on emotions and expressions which are conveyed through eyes, the clenching of fists, or the shedding of tears, and all of these things are placed within panels that are very easy to miss, or when he incorporates foreshadowing into his work. For example, when Hollow Ichigo was seen to be frowning in the reflection of his blade, which contrasts his maniacal personality, as this was the first hint that he was troubled by Ichigo pushing him away. These are all amazing ways to show and not tell the audience, not to insult their intelligence by spoon-feeding them every plot point. One of my favorite examples of how he uses visuals to convey story is how Ichigo's inner world changes depending on his mood. When he frowns, it becomes cloudy. When he is sad, it begins to rain. And when he is suffering despair, his inner world is submerged in water. Kubo evidently respects his readers, and he decides not to spoon-feed every plot point to them. And incidentally, his art style had also evolved to match the mature, serious, and complex nature of his story and his method of telling it. While I love Toriyama's unique dynamic poses and how he conveys action on a page, or how Oda has a distinctive cartoony style that immerses you into his fictional world, or even how Kishimoto crafts a fascinating ninja world with an incredible ability to warp perspectives and to draw some very detailed art, in my opinion, I believe that Kubo's art style is unmatched, and it's the most unique and distinctive style to have featured within the pages of Shonen Jump. An art style that is very difficult to replicate, and one that has helped Kubo to be synonymous with the word cool and stylish, as all too often people praise Bleach for its unique sense of style, stating that it had the most drip or features the best manga volume cover style, which had actually led to a trend where people were recreating other manga covers using Bleach's cover style. In the end, what did you think about the growth and evolution of Tite Kubo as an artist? Was there a particular style of his during Bleach or his past work that you really liked? Or like me, do you love his recent style more? I look forward to reading all of your thoughts on this inspirational artist, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.